The emperor issued an edict, commanding the Minister of Personnel to select a woman to marry the crown prince's eunuch companion. My father was on the verge of spitting blood, and my sisters looked distraught. Only I stepped forward. I'll do it. Having died once, I knew this was no ordinary eunuch, that was the future 9,000 years old, an immense fortune. Later, I rubbed my aching back, on the verge of tears. Turns out, it wasn't just the fortune that was immense, but also the 9,000 years old's prowess. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. An imperial decree arrived at the minister's residence. By imperial decree, Minister of Rights Meng Fei is to select a woman to be bestowed upon the eunuch Shui Yao. The marriage will be completed within days. Father stared at the imperial decree, his eyes wide with fury, while the wives and concubines nearly fainted. My sisters were in a panic, crying their eyes out. Only I remained calm and composed. I stepped forward and took the imperial decree from my father's hand, whispering, "Let me do it." The room was silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were on me, filled with surprise, confusion, and suspicion. Indeed, as the daughter of a high-ranking official, even if only a concubine's daughter, marrying into a prominent family would be more than enough. No one knew why I willingly jumped into the fire pit, but no one objected either. I chuckled self-deprecatingly, clutching the imperial decree in my hand, letting memories run wild. In my previous life, it was my third sister, Mengyiru, who was ordered by our father to marry the eunuch Shui Yao. Mengyiru was ill-mannered and rude, and after marriage, she became even worse, humiliating Shui Yao both in public and private. Ultimately, the entire Shengshu mansion, along with her, incurred an irreconcilable enmity with Shui Yao. After the new emperor ascended the throne, Shui Yao rose to power overnight, becoming the feared grand eunuch. The men of the Shengshu mansion were beheaded, and the women were exiled, an overnight annihilation. My mother, who was bedridden and recovering from illness, heard the news that I was to marry Shui Yao and accidentally knocked over her medicine bowl. She struggled to prop herself up, wanting to beg my father to change his mind. I gently pressed mother back onto the bed and shook my head. Mother, eldest sister is already betrothed, and third sister has a volatile temper. She would only bring trouble to the Meng household. Although that Shui Yao is an eunuch, he can follow the crown prince, so he must have some capability. I also heard he is quite handsome. Don't worry, your daughter will be fine. Mother was stunned for a long time, then tremblingly reached out and embraced me to her chest. I heard mother's mournful sobs in my ears, and my heart was also filled with bitterness and sorrow. Although I knew it was impossible, I had to do it. In my previous life, I accidentally learned that father originally intended to send me to the palace. It was only after my mother knelt all night that Mengyiru, born of Aunt Zhao, was able to enter the palace. Later, my mother died of a sudden illness, also at the hands of Aunt Zhao. So, although I'm not sure what fate awaits me in the palace this time, in this life, however, I only want my mother to live well. Soon, the wedding day arrived. As it wasn't a glorious affair, the Meng residents didn't make a big fuss. On the wedding day itself, I was quietly carried into the palace in a soft sedan chair. I secretly lifted the sedan curtain, watching my mother's trembling figure in the wind grow smaller, and the vast Shengshu residence fade into the distance. In her previous life, Shui Yao often suffered humiliation from Mengyiru and harassment from the Meng family. However, at that time, the crown prince was weak, and Shui Yao always endured the humiliation, acting cautiously. Later, as the crown prince gained strength, Shui Yao gradually revealed her ruthlessness, becoming a sharp blade for the crown prince. Rumor had it that the grand eunuch was sinister and ruthless, capable of stopping children from crying at night. Later, the Meng mansion was gone. I swallowed, feeling a little nervous. I was afraid that if I wasn't careful, the future 9,000-year-old would hold a grudge against me, and I would lose my life later, all for nothing. Shui Yao's residence was in a side hall not far from the East Palace, simply decorated for the day. By midnight, Shui Yao still hadn't returned. A young eunuch came to deliver a message, saying that Shui Yao had important matters to discuss with the crown prince today and would not be returning. Fair point. Everyone knew that Meng Fei, the Minister of Rights, belonged to the third prince's faction and was at loggerheads with the crown prince's party. This is precisely why His Majesty issued this decree, as a warning. I suppose Shui Yao never had much fondness for me, the so-called daughter of a minister. By noon the next day, I had thoroughly cleaned every corner of the house and prepared a steaming hot meal. Suddenly, a figure slipped in through the door. He had a handsome face, a tall stature, broad shoulders, and a pair of phoenix eyes that shimmered with a cold, tranquil light. His features, though soft, carried a hint of sharpness. Shui Yao seemed a little surprised to see me personally clean the house and prepare the meals. He probably thought I was an ordinary official's daughter, one who never lifted a finger, but I am merely an unfavored concubine's daughter, and having served my mother for years, I am already accustomed to these chores. Last night, the Crown Prince and I had important matters to discuss, and I truly couldn't get away. I apologize for making you wait all night. Please don't take offense. Shui Yao gave me a slight nod. His voice was gentle and his demeanor polite, but I keenly caught a fleeting hint of annoyance. For the next half-month, my relationship with Shui Yao made no progress whatsoever. It was as if we were strangers living under the same roof, each minding our own business. I suddenly remembered hearing in my previous life that the Grand Eunuch was ruthless but had a sweet tooth, especially for osmanthus cake, so I tried to cater to his preferences, making a small plate of soft, sweet osmanthus cakes every day and leaving them on the table. However, the pastries were never touched. Instead, they made me gain a size. A few days ago, the third prince's faction, led by my father, began to stir up trouble in the imperial court again. I heard Meng Yiru was betrothed to the prime minister's son, and everyone envied her. Everyone also knew that the third prince's power had grown. Shui Yao's gaze towards me became even more wary, and his expression grew more distant. At this rate, I probably can't escape the fate of my family being wiped out. Today, we had a rare visitor. Meng Yiru surveyed the humble room, a look of disgust creasing her brow. Yet her face was alight with triumph. Meng Yan, we are both concubine-born daughters, yet why do we live such vastly different lives? The man you married, just mentioning him would disgrace the Meng family. And my future husband is an extraordinary man, and he follows the third prince, so his future prospects are limitless. In terms of prospects, who can compare to the Grand Eunuch, who holds immense power in the court, with such poor judgment? No wonder you didn't enjoy good fortune in your previous life. Don't underestimate Shui, my husband. Don't mock a young man for being poor. We'll see who's nobler in the future. Seeing her gloating, I couldn't help but retort. Meng Yiru seemed to have heard the funniest joke, laughing heartily for a while, bending forward and backward. Then she looked me up and down with eyes that saw a fool, and taunted, "Are you so stupid from being a living widow, still talking about a young man? That Shui Yao isn't even a man, just an eunuch. He can't even satisfy your most basic needs, and you're still here dreaming." Seeing her mock Shui Yao with this, an unknown anger flared in my heart. What's wrong with being an eunuch? Did eunuchs choose to be eunuchs? Before, Sima Qian endured castration to write records of the grand historian, and later, Zhang He sailed the 7 seas to assert our nation's prestige. Those with great ambitions can achieve anything. How can you look down on someone for this? The more I spoke, the angrier I got, and before I knew it, my mouth moved faster than my brain. Besides, who said he couldn't satisfy me? Little sister, you don't know, but I, your elder sister, have nightly revelries and am very satisfied. Shui Yao is much more affectionate than ordinary men. Meng Yiru's gaze towards me changed. More accurately, it was directed behind me. I slowly turned my head. Shui Yao was leaning against the door, arms crossed, looking at me with a half-smile. I want to die. I felt a sudden rush of heat to my face, as if it were on fire. That night, Shui Yao, contrary to his usual habit, did not stay in the study. Instead, he came towards the bedroom. In the flickering candlelight, Shui Yao approached step by step, his narrow eyes seemingly swirling with desire. With one hand, he untied the jade belt at his waist, while the other caressed my waist, his cool lips pressed against my ear, rubbing and lingering. "Madam, it seems we have not yet consummated our marriage. How does my lady find satisfaction?" I shivered, instinctively taking a small step back, but I was pulled back with greater force, my head colliding with Shui Yao's hot, firm chest. The scent of a young man, as clear as a spring and tinged with desire, lingered in my nostrils. I tilted my head slightly, meeting Shui Yao's deep gaze. Our eyes met, our breaths intertwined. Shui Yao's gaze lingered on my face for a moment, his expression ambiguous. I couldn't help but tremble. In my previous life, my romantic prospects were scarce. Several marriages my father tried to arrange always inexplicably fell through. Don't talk about marriage, I've never even had experience interacting with men, therefore I don't know how to deal with the current situation. I had a headache, so I just closed my eyes, accidentally tensed up my body stiff as a board. Perhaps sensing my unease, Shui Yao slowed his movements, his hands pausing midair as he undid the buttons of my robe. I waited and waited, but there was no movement, so I quietly lifted one eyelid. Just then, I caught a hint of hesitation in the other person's eyes. I understand. I couldn't help but glance at Shui Yao, a look of understanding on my face. Seeing my gaze suddenly drop, Shui Yao also glanced down, and his expression seemed to stiffen. Noticing his unusual expression, I thought for a moment, then raised my hand and patted his shoulder, as if to comfort him. It's all right, it's all right. Shui Yao closed his eyes and took a deep breath. For some reason, he looked as if he were gritting his teeth. I hadn't yet figured out what was going on. Suddenly, I felt my body go light as he scooped me up by the waist. He tossed me onto the bed, then immediately covered me with his body, kissing me fiercely. I gradually felt breathless, panting slightly. Suddenly, a sharp voice came from outside. Supervisor Shui, the Crown Prince requests your immediate presence at the Eastern Palace. It seemed to be an attendant by the Crown Prince's side, and his tone sounded very anxious. Shui Yao paused abruptly, quickly rolling out of bed. He straightened his robe slightly, told me to sleep on my own, and then hurriedly pushed the door open to leave. Sure enough, Shui Yao never returned before I fell asleep. Early the next morning, I heard the news. Last night, treasonous writings were discovered at the residence of Kong Yicheng, the Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince. Grand Tutor Kong, who is over 70 years old, was immediately taken to prison overnight. This Grand Tutor was not only the Crown Prince's teacher but also the elder whom Shui Yao respected the most. In his previous life, Grand Tutor Kong died of a sudden illness not long after being imprisoned, and this debt would be firmly recorded by Shui Yao on the Meng Manor's ledger. Because the one who led the search of the manor and apprehended Grand Tutor Kong was none other than my father, Meng Fei, I saw Shui Yao again 2 days later. He returned travel-worn, with exhaustion etched on his brow, and his figure had thinned somewhat. I reached out to take his cloak, but he paused, seemingly inadvertently avoiding my hand, and lifted his own hand to hang the cloak. The wariness and aloofness in his eyes were even more pronounced than before. I sighed softly. In fact, Shui Yao might not truly believe I was involved in this incident. However, when it concerns his mentor, no matter how rational he is, it's difficult for him to treat me, the daughter of his enemy, with a normal mindset, and for a while, it's hard for me to prove my innocence. I can only continue to be as law-abiding and diligent as before. I hope that on the day Shui Yao becomes the 9,000-year-old, his thunderous wrath will not affect my mother and me. In the following days, Shui Yao continued to leave early and return late, constantly rushing and maneuvering between various places. However, things did not improve, and Shui Yao's expression grew darker day by day. The opponent was like a slippery, cunning snake, suddenly biting someone, then retreating completely, continuing to lurk in the shadows, flicking its tongue, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. These past 2 days, the emperor has been unwell, and the crown prince has been attending to him daily. The Eastern Palace was temporarily inaccessible. Shui Yao then brought several close court officials back to his study for a discussion. Among them, I saw a slightly familiar face. It was Zhao Ning, Grand Tutor Kong's favorite student, the top scholar in the imperial examination that year, and now a compiler in the Hanlin Academy. In my previous life, because my mother was not well, I often served her until she fell asleep before returning to my own room. When passing by my father's study, I would occasionally encounter a few cautious-looking guests who visited late at night. Zhao Ning was one of them, but if he was so close to my father, why would he be involved with Shui Yao? Was Zhao Ning my father's informant, or Shui Yao's pawn? Suspicion arose in my heart, and I couldn't help but ponder more. If this turmoil was caused by Zhao Ning, I looked up in the direction of the study, wondering if Shui Yao would believe my one-sided story. After nightfall, I listened intently for any movement. Once the group dispersed, I took a breath and pushed open the door to the study. Shui Yao showed a hint of surprise when he saw me suddenly come to find him. After all, we had barely exchanged a word these past few days. After I finished telling him about Zhao Ning, Shui Yao's calm expression changed. He lowered his voice, gritted his teeth, and questioned me word by word. Meng Fei was unjust, causing my mentor to be wrongly imprisoned. Zhao Ning is my senior brother, and we have been fellow disciples for many years. Why should I trust you, Meng Fei's daughter? 2 gazes, like ice, fell upon my face, carrying a bone-chilling coldness. My heart trembled, but I forced myself to steady my nerves. Whether you believe it or not, I am merely stating what I have seen. I know you have your ways to verify its authenticity. I paused, then continued. Though I am a daughter of the Meng family, I am also a wife of the Shui family. You and I are one as husband and wife. We prosper together, and we suffer together. There is no need for me to deceive you. Shui Yao remained silent, only slightly furrowing his brow, lost in thought. Having said all I could, I pushed the door, ready to leave, when I suddenly caught sight of the moon, like a jade plate. In the night sky, I was startled to realize that the Mid-Autumn Festival was in 3 days. The steps I had taken were abruptly pulled back, and I braced myself to meet Shui Yao's impatient gaze. One more thing, in a flash, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival night. These past 2 days, Shui Yao was still incredibly busy, nowhere to be seen all day. In his previous life, Grand Tutor Kong had suddenly fallen ill and passed away on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival. By the time he was discovered the next day, it was already too late. The sun had almost set, and a hazy layer of night emerged on the horizon. Still no sign of Shui Yao, and I couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Although I had subtly mentioned it that day, Shui Yao's attitude remained unclear. If his unwillingness to trust me leads to Grand Tutor Kong's tragedy in this life, then it has nothing to do with me, right? Although I thought this, my heart couldn't stop feeling uneasy. The sky was getting darker. If I didn't leave soon, I probably wouldn't even make it in time for the body to be warm. Sigh, I gritted my teeth, picked up the bento box I had prepared earlier, and quickly headed towards the Ministry of Justice. In the dark and damp prison, the light was dim, exuding a chilling coldness. I bribed the jailer with some silver, and easily found Grand Tutor Kong's cell. The elderly Grand Tutor seemed to have aged considerably after enduring imprisonment. His clothes were tattered, his face pale, and his hair disheveled. The Grand Tutor, once so high and mighty, was now a prisoner, trampled upon by others. All of this was thanks to my father, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt, seeing a visitor. Grand Tutor Kong was slightly startled, a hint of wariness in his eyes. I quickly identified myself. Upon hearing that I was Shui Yao's wife, the Grand Tutor's gaze gradually softened, as the matter was urgent. I went straight to the point with Grand Tutor Kong, explaining my purpose and subtly warning him to be wary of Zhao Ning. After listening to me, Grand Tutor Kong pondered for a moment and then mused. Are you saying that my student disregarded human decency and colluded with outsiders to plot against their own teacher? Miss Meng, it's not that I don't believe you, but do you have any evidence for what you're saying? The old man's attitude was much gentler than I had imagined. And I breathed a sigh of relief. Not at the moment, but if you trust me, you'll find out tonight. Before long, Zhao Ning hurried over, carrying a lunchbox. He sat cross-legged on the ground, took out a few dishes and a pot of wine. Intending to drink with the Grand Tutor, I quickly emerged from the shadows, stepped forward, and decisively interrupted Zhao Ning's actions. Miss Meng, what do you mean by this? Zhao Ning seemed a little surprised to see me there. Please forgive me. Young Master Zhao, my husband instructed me to look after Grand Tutor Kong here tonight, and I'm afraid I'll have to inspect this food. I had no other choice but to invoke Shui Yao's name and offer a perfunctory bow to express my apologies. A flicker of imperceptible panic crossed Zhao Ning's face, then quickly subsided. He spoke with a feigned air of helplessness. No problem, if it puts Brother Shui at ease, then let's test it. But I took out the silver needles and tested the food and wine repeatedly, yet found nothing unusual. Now, Miss Meng, are you at ease? How could this be? I must have missed something. A fine sheen of sweat broke out on my forehead, but my hands wouldn't stop moving, threatening to ruin the perfectly good vegetables I was preparing. Enough, Miss Meng, you may return now. I appreciate your kind intentions, seeing that I was getting nowhere but still wouldn't give up. Grand Tutor Kong's attitude grew cold. He issued a dismissal, leaving no room for argument. Zhao Ning watched me with a smile, a hint of triumph in his eyes, and gestured for me to leave. My wife is ill-mannered. Please forgive her, teacher and Brother Zhao. Shui emerged from a dark corner and quickly stepped forward. When did he arrive? I turned my head to look at him, whom I hadn't seen in days, and couldn't help but be stunned. Shui Yao took the silver needle from my hand and held it above a plate of carved fish. Madam, you missed this spot. I've inspected this plate of fish, and there's nothing wrong with it." Shui Yao's lips curved slightly, with a flick of her wrist. The silver needle landed steadily in the fish's eye. The silver needle turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhao Ning's eyes widened abruptly, and his face instantly lost all color. "Take him away and interrogate him thoroughly." Shui Yao stared intently at Zhao Ning, his gaze cold and terrifying. As he spoke each word, a line of people filed out, dragging Zhao Ning, who was slumped on the ground, into the darkness. In the lightless dungeon, Shui Yao stood with his hands behind his back. His expression icy, he exuded an overwhelming aura of malevolence. Like Yama Reborn, Zhao Ning was a weakling. He confessed all his crimes after only a few tortures. The treasonous items found in Grand Tutor Kong's residence were planted by him. The poison in the fish eyes that caused Hua Diao's death was also administered by him. Only he and a few of his fellow disciples knew that Grand Tutor Kong had always loved eating fish eyes. Zhao Ning had long since joined the third prince's treacherous faction, yet Shui Yao and the others, blinded by their past friendship, never suspected him. In this life, Grand Tutor Kong's injustice was finally redressed. Rewriting his fate of dying with resentment, Shui Yao's attitude towards me also underwent a complete 180-degree change. He completely changed his elusive style. He came back for meals every day and stayed in the bedroom at night, several times. He tried to reach out and embrace me, but I always dodged him, citing fatigue. Although I knew rationally that I shouldn't, the feeling of being suspected before was not pleasant. Ultimately, there was some grievance on this day. It was the Crown Prince's birthday. Shui had gone to the Eastern Palace for a banquet and had not yet returned. I figured he probably wouldn't be back tonight, so I went to bed first, half asleep, half awake. I suddenly felt someone stroking my waist, a pair of large hands roaming over my body. I woke up with a start, all sleepiness gone, and was about to struggle free. "Madam, it's me." Shui Yao's voice was hoarse, and his breathing was a little unsteady. His warm, alcohol-laced breath brushed against my ear, sending shivers down my spine. I tried to turn over, but Shui Yao's hand was clasped tightly around my waist, and he sighed softly. "I know you still resent me, the Grand Tutor's case. I shouldn't have suspected you without cause. It was my fault. I misunderstood you. It's only right that you, my lady, resent me." Shui straightened my body, his arms propped above me, staring intently at me. "My lady, could you forgive your husband this once? I'm not one to hold a grudge. All I really care about is the attitude. Since he's already apologized to me sincerely, how could I be unreasonable? Come down now, I forgive you," I grumbled, lowering my eyes, trying to avoid that gaze that burned like fire. Shui Yao was startled, his cool fingertips pinching my chin. He leaned down, and his warm lips covered mine. "Madam is so kind. My misunderstanding of Madam has been resolved, but Madam's misunderstanding of me has not yet." "Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding?" His words left me a little confused, but I couldn't dwell on it. Shui was like a wolf starved for days, fiercely licking my lips. That night, he tirelessly demanded more. Again and again, faint moans of pleasure rippled through the long night, painting it with boundless spring. Shui Yao's actions completely dispelled my misunderstanding. Waking up the next day, my body felt as if it had fallen apart, aching intensely with the slightest movement. Shui Yao was leaning casually nearby, and upon seeing me awake, a smile involuntarily appeared at the corner of his mouth. He pulled me into his arms, and while rubbing my back, he told me a secret. It turned out that Shui Yao was the only son of General Xuanwu. Decades ago, General Xuanwu had fought for our dynasty, north and south, achieving great feats, and was also a loyal supporter of the Crown Prince. At that time, the current emperor was just an unknown second prince. He was ambitious, biding his time for many years, and finally staged a coup. In this palace coup, the Crown Prince was killed, the former emperor was imprisoned, and the Crown Prince's faction was completely wiped out. However, the former emperor, unable to bear the thought of a loyal minister's lineage ending, secretly sent someone to rescue Shui Yao, who was still an infant, entrusting him to a eunuch named Ma, who had once received kindness from the general. Thus, Shui Yao's life was spared. When I was 6, I accidentally offended the third prince and was punished to kneel in the freezing snow during the bitter winter. When I was about to die, the Crown Prince happened to pass by and saved my life. Since then, I have been determined to be loyal to the Crown Prince, and even when he was at his lowest, I never once thought of leaving him. He spoke in a calm tone, repeatedly narrating other people's stories in his previous life. Shui Yao ultimately achieved supreme glory and enjoyed boundless prosperity. People in the market commented on Shui Yao, young, with exceptional foresight, skilled at choosing a wise lord to serve, yet, the hardships and bitterness within remained unknown. But how could such an important secret be so easily revealed to me? If I were merely a pawn of my father, and I exposed this secret to the emperor, would Shui Yao still have a chance to live? Thinking of this, I secretly glanced at Shui Yao. My face full of unspoken words, he frowned, smiling, and his long, slender hands stroked my hair, his tone soft. As you said, between husband and wife, trust should be paramount. From now on, I will entrust my biggest secret to you. I was silent for a moment, looking at his gentle expression. My heart is warm as a spring day in March. Shui said that in previous years, the late emperor and eunuch Ma passed away one after another. Now, besides him, only the crown prince and I know this secret. But knowing this secret naturally comes at a price. Shui knew he was in the wrong, and after work each day, he would always smilingly bring me osmanthus cakes from Rongxingzai to apologize, only to commit the same offense again. These past few days, Shui Yao had somehow learned some new tricks that made one blush. Recalling the excited gleam in Shui Yao's eyes last night, I shook my head with a wry smile. Somehow, I too seemed bewitched, allowing him to indulge in such mischief. It wasn't that I hadn't protested, it was just that every time, I couldn't resist Shui Yao's pleading, with his lowered lashes, softened tone, and coaxing words. Sigh, truly, lust makes one lose their mind. I rubbed my wrist, got up, and wanted to get some ointment. My eyes caught a cold glint on the floor. It was that dagger. Perhaps Shui Yao casually tossed it aside after using it last night, and then forgot to bring it when he rushed out this morning. Shui Yao usually kept this dagger hidden inside his official boots for emergencies. In his previous life, the crown prince was once assassinated at the Empress Dowager's chrysanthemum banquet, and it was with this very dagger that Shui Yao slew the assassin, saving the crown prince's life. Oh, and last night, amidst their intimate moments, Shui Yao seemed to have mentioned that he wouldn't be back for lunch today. It's as if I'm supposed to attend a banquet. That's right. It's the chrysanthemum banquet. Gazing at the sun gradually rising outside the window, my mind went blank for a moment, and my back was drenched in cold sweat. If the crown prince were to suffer misfortune, I dared not imagine. I hastily put on my outer garment, hid the dagger at my waist, and hurried towards Longevity Palace. I finally arrived before the banquet began. However, the guards at the palace gate, seeing that I had no invitation, adamantly refused to let me in. Could you two brothers do me a favor and let me in to deliver something? Or, you two could inform Supervisor Shui for me. I can wait for him at the entrance. No matter how much I pleaded, the two guards just waved their hands, their faces cold, and ignored me. Ian, why are you here? My father, who had come for the banquet, stood before me. His face clouded with gloom, his gaze scrutinizing my face. I knew it was wrong, but I gritted my teeth and, with a dead horse, live horse mentality, bowed to him. Daughter has an important matter to discuss with Master Shui. Could you please inform him that I am waiting for him here? Nonsense, this is no place for you to be. Go back at once. Upon hearing this, my father's brows furrowed. He let out a low reprimand and then strode away. Just as I thought, more and more people were inside. In another moment, the feast would begin. My heart was pounding, and fine beads of sweat appeared on my forehead. Madame Shui, a trembling voice came from behind me. I turned around and my eyes lit up slightly, my voice unable to suppress its excitement. Grand Tutor Kong, the trajectory of fate was exactly the same as in my previous life. As expected, an assassination attempt on the crown prince occurred at the banquet, and as expected, Shui Yao saved him. Fortunately, I met Grand Tutor Kong. Otherwise, I would have been eternally culpable in this life. At night, Shui Yao held me close on the bed, whispering, if it weren't for you today, the crown prince and I would likely have fallen into the hands of those assassins. Who would have thought that the person by the Empress Dowager's side had been replaced by a death warrior? I gently bit my lip, a wave of fear washing over me. I almost harmed him. Shui tightened his arms around me, resting his chin on my head. The third prince seems to be getting restless. It looks like we'll be busy soon. I won't be able to spend as much time with you as before, but you're not allowed to get angry. I nodded eagerly, as it should be, seeing my ready agreement. Shui Yao was slightly taken aback, and immediately became a little displeased, her tone tinged with resentment. I knew it. Madam doesn't care for my company at all. I should just go busy myself. No one will feel sorry for me even if I work myself to death anyway. My mouth twitched, and I felt a headache coming on. This person is so imposing outside, but when he gets angry, he's like a child. I spent a long time coaxing him, saying all sorts of nice things, and even playing some new tricks, before he was finally satisfied and went to sleep. But Shui Yao really wasn't lying. After that day, he became the busy Shui Yao who was always on the go again. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night to find an extra person in my bed. Other times, he doesn't come home for several nights in a row. Tensions between the two parties are already high, and every now and then, you hear about another official falling from grace. The imperial court is in a state of alarm, and the air has grown tense. This is good. Let bygones be bygones, and let everything follow the trajectory of its past life. Just as I was praying for everything to go smoothly, Mengyiru, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, came knocking on my door again. Mengyiru was now a married woman, adorned with pearls and jewels, and her eyes had a sharper, more acrimonious look. I hear you're getting along quite well with that supervisor Shui these days. She looked me up and down, her eyes sparkling, a hint of teasing in her voice. I picked up my teacup, blew on the few floating tea leaves, and lowered my gaze without speaking. I wondered what she was up to. Father was indeed right. But you'd best not forget your place. The smile vanished from Mengyiru's face, and her voice turned cold as she threw a letter and a brocade pouch onto the table. I opened the envelope. The letter inside was in my father's handwriting, and the content was simple. He wanted me to seize an opportunity to poison Shui Yao. Inside the brocade pouch was a packet of powder and a hairpin I had given to my mother when I was 10, but it had broken into 2 pieces. My heart was in turmoil, and the fingers clutching the hairpin turned slightly white. Mengyiru watched me read the letter, then reached out to take it. Give it to me once you're done, I'll destroy it. I suddenly came back to my senses, forced myself to calm down, and spoke with composure. Third sister, don't worry, I will handle this matter myself, but you must take this brocade pouch with you first. Facing Mengyiru's puzzled gaze, I carefully chose my words, my face sincere. Firstly, Shui Yao has barely been home for meals recently, so I haven't had a chance to act. Secondly, if something were to happen to Shui Yao at home, I would be the first one investigated. You don't know, ever since the last assassination attempt, Shui Yao has become even more wary of me. He knows exactly who enters my room every day and what new things are added. I'm afraid that if I'm not careful, I'll implicate you. The Empress Dowager's birthday banquet is the day after tomorrow. All civil and military officials and their families will be present. You can give me the item then, and I'll find an opportunity to put it in Shui Yao's food. This way, our Meng manor will definitely not be implicated. What do you think? Mengyiru hesitated for a moment, biting her lip and thinking carefully. She seemed to think what I said made some sense. Then let it be so. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief, since the Meng mansion arranged for me to be this killing blade. They clearly already considered me a disposable pawn. If I succeeded, I would surely not escape death, but my mother is still trapped in the mansion, so I have no choice but to be constrained by them. Fortunately, Mengyiru is simple-minded, so there's still room for maneuver. The most important thing now is to get in touch with Shui Yaotong. If he doesn't return tonight, I'll have to go out and find him tomorrow, but then I'm afraid it might alert the Meng family. This dilemma continued until late at night. I couldn't fight off the sleepiness any longer and was about to lie down when I heard familiar footsteps outside the door. My heart suddenly lightened. Shui was coming back, in a blink. It was the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. Soon after I was seated, I saw Mengyiru standing by a nearby pillar, frequently winking at me. My heart skipped a beat. I took a deep breath and walked towards her, holding my wine cup. Why are you so slow? Mengyiru lowered her voice, scolding slightly displeased, then glanced around in a panic, maintaining a fake smile on her face. Please forgive me, third sister. I've collected some evidence against Shui Yao these past 2 days. This is of great importance. You must personally hand it over to father for me. I took a letter from my bosom and solemnly placed it in Mengyiru's hand. Got it. Come closer, it's in my sleeve. Be careful not to let anyone see. Mengyiru was a little anxious, constantly urging in a low voice. Seeing that she had taken the letter, I immediately looked up at Shui Yao, raised my hand, and smashed the wine glass in my hand. With a crisp sound, several guards immediately appeared, surrounding Mengyiru, and quickly found a bag of powder and a letter on her. Shui Yao, who had arrived beside me at some point, spoke in a deep voice. Bold Mengiru, you dared to conspire against the crown prince. Now that you've been caught red-handed, do you confess your crime? Mengiru's pupils constricted, her face turned pale, and in her desperation, she shrieked in protest. I didn't want to kill the crown prince, I wanted to kill. Realizing she had almost made a slip of the tongue, she immediately fell silent, not daring to look up. Suddenly, as if realizing something, Mengiru abruptly looked up and stared intently at me. Meng Yan, did you set me up? Shui subtly blocked my path. Someone, take her away and await my command. The letter was presented on the Empress Dowager's and Emperor's table, stating that the sender had ordered Mengiru to poison the crown prince today. It was Meng Fei's handwriting. The Empress Dowager, already in a foul mood after her birthday banquet was disturbed, nearly fainted when she saw someone attempting to harm her legitimate grandson. The emperor, frightened, immediately called for the imperial physicians. Recalling the various troubles Meng Fei had stirred up in the previous dynasty, anger surged within him. He immediately ordered Meng Fei and all relevant individuals from his residence to be arrested and subjected to a thorough interrogation by the Ministry of Justice. The Meng family ultimately could not escape the fate of their impending downfall, which arrived even earlier than in the previous life. I was naturally exempt, having been rewarded for my successful report. No one would have guessed that, having served by my mother's bedside since childhood, I loved to pass the time by copying calligraphy, and in my mother's bedroom, there was a trunk filled with letters Meng Fei had written to her in his youth. Meng Fei's handwriting was excellent, and I imitated it perfectly. A few days later, Shui mysteriously told me he was taking me somewhere. The carriage rattled for a long time, winding through alleys, finally stopping in front of a detached courtyard. From a distance, I saw a familiar figure in a wicker chair under a tree, and I could hardly believe my eyes. After taking a few more steps, my eyes welled up, and I immediately started running. Rushing towards him without hesitation, I embraced the person, crying tears of joy. Mother! Mother was stunned for a moment, then tears slowly welled up in her eyes. Her small frame held me tightly, as if I were a lost and found treasure. When the Meng family had trouble this time, Mother was also implicated. So Shui Yao took the opportunity to play some tricks so that Mother, due to her poor health, would die in prison forever. A few days ago, I couldn't sleep day or night because of Mother's situation, and Shui Yao always told me to relax. Although I had a premonition that Mother would be fine, I never expected such a huge surprise. Through the misty haze in my eyes, I looked at Shui Yao, who was smiling at me from the side, and my heart was filled with uncontrollable joy. I'm afraid all the good fortune from my previous life must have accumulated in this one. Mother led me into the bedroom and sat me down, grasping my hand and gazing into my eyes. Ever since you got married, I've regretted it day and night, worrying that this marriage would ruin you. Although Shui treats you very well, he is not an ordinary man after all. If you regret it, your mother will go beg him, go work like an ox or a horse for him, whatever it takes to make him let you go. My mother's eyes reddened, and her voice trembled but was firm, as if she had mustered great courage. My nose stung, and I quickly gripped my mother's hand tightly. Mother, don't worry, I truly like him, he's a good man. Besides him, doesn't want to marry anyone else. Although Mother was a little puzzled, seeing my determination and glancing at Shui Yao's tall and elegant figure in the courtyard, her expression gradually softened. Never mind, as long as is set on it. On the carriage ride back, Shui Yao was in a very good mood, smiling and looking at me the whole way. I felt completely uncomfortable under his gaze and was about to ask him what was wrong. Suddenly, a force pulled me into his arms, and a teasing voice whispered in my ear, besides me, is there truly no one else you wish to marry, my lady? My heart skipped a beat, and my face immediately flushed crimson. I shook my head, vehemently denying it. Shui leaned in to kiss me, insisting I repeat that sentence. I tried to break free, but he grabbed my wrist, rolled over, and pinned me beneath him, a low chuckle escaping his lips. Being disobedient will lead to punishment. The wheels rolled on, and the curtains swayed gently. The alleyways were filled with the warmth of spring. With the fall of the Meng mansion, the third prince lost a major support and became increasingly dispirited, while the crown prince's faction gradually gained the upper hand. Shui had to shuttle between the imperial court and the harem, busy eliminating dissidents. The crown prince also demonstrated extraordinary talent in handling state affairs. Due to his ailing health and advancing age, the emperor became obsessed with elixirs. Spending his days seeking methods for immortality, in less than half a year, he passed away. The crown prince ascended the throne smoothly, and Shui Yao, just like in his previous life, became the 9,000-year-old lord, a name that struck fear into everyone. However, he remained as gentle as ever towards me. If Shui was in a bad mood and there was some troubling news to deliver, the quick-witted young eunuchs in the palace would roll their eyes and know to subtly ask me to speak for them. This identity as the wife of the 9,000-year lord seemed even more esteemed than that of those titled ladies, but something happened recently, and now this identity is no longer enough for me. At night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind heavy with worries. Shui Yao called out tentatively, leaning over to look at me. My lord, have you ever thought about resuming your true identity? I hesitated for a long time, but finally spoke. Shui thought seriously for a moment. There's no rush for that. Some things are more convenient to handle with my current identity. Is Madam anxious? You don't want to be a eunuch's wife anymore, do you? Shui reached out and pinched my face, teasingly saying, I'm not in a hurry. I clutched the corner of the quilt, stammering, my voice growing softer and softer. I'm just afraid the baby can't wait. After a while, Shui Yao suddenly sat up, his voice rising 8 octaves in surprise. What? For a long time afterward, it was rumored in the palace that the 9,000-year-old eunuch must have been possessed. A person who had always been stern and humorless suddenly had a smile in his eyes and on his brows. He even smiled when interrogating criminals. The prisoner was so scared he almost cried, and even confessed much more readily. When I heard this rumor, I lowered my head and caressed my increasingly prominent belly, a slight smile playing on my lips. Outside the window, spring was bright and the flowers were in full bloom. Everything was beautiful, just like the days of this life. The end. Extra story. Shui Yao's dream. On the day Shui Yao's identity was restored, the emperor, with a stroke of his brush, bestowed upon him the title of Duke Xinghua and granted him a duke's mansion. Finally, he could give his wife and baby a legitimate home. Shui Yao was overjoyed and drank a lot of wine at the housewarming banquet. At night, he had a dream. Shui Yao returned to the night of his wedding. He remembered that he had not returned to the bridal chamber that night, leaving his wife to spend the night alone. How did he get a second chance from heaven? He ignored the crown prince's playful gaze and strode quickly back to his residence. But why was it Mengyiru dressed in red? Shui Yao's body stiffened, and his breathing became difficult. He seemed not to hear the harsh words Mengyiru was spewing into his ear. This isn't right. Where is his honor? Mengyiru was arrogant and rude, with a malicious heart. Not even a fraction as good as his honor. Shui Yao's heart was in turmoil, unsure of what had gone wrong. He secretly sent someone to inquire and only then learned that Meng Yian was still living in the minister's mansion, an unwelcome illegitimate young lady. It's just Aner's mother, somehow, is no longer here. How sad she must be. Shui Yao's heart ached in waves. This world seems the same as before, yet also different. Grand Tutor Kong was unjustly imprisoned. On the mid-autumn night, he captured Zhao Ning. But he no longer saw her graceful figure frantically testing for poison. This time, he did not execute Zhao Ning. Instead, he held Zhao Ning's family hostage, forcing Zhao Ning to work for him. Outwardly, he announced that the Grand Tutor had died of a sudden illness, dispelling the suspicions of the Third Prince's faction. In reality, he harbored a selfish motive. Aner once said that she had seen Zhao Ning and Meng Fei together, so he ordered Zhao Ning to continue to keep in touch with Meng Fei and occasionally tell him about Aner's situation. When he heard that Meng Fei intended to arrange a marriage for Aner, he interfered repeatedly. How could his wife marry someone else, this time? Shui Yao ruthlessly suppressed the Third Prince's faction, seizing upon every minor fault and refusing to let go. Like a mad dog, he was ruthless and merciless. With a fearsome reputation, the Crown Prince advised him not to be so extreme, saying that too much was as bad as too little, and that he should take his time. However, he always felt that if he didn't hurry, Aner wouldn't wait for him. The Empress Dowager's birthday banquet had arrived. Shui Yaofu caressed the dagger. Thinking of the belt he had cut, he closed his eyes, a dull ache in his heart. Heaven knew how much he missed her. Once, he went to Rongxingzai and bought her favorite osmanthus cake. He never understood why she loved this sweet, glutinous treat. He took a bite, and it was clearly bitter. but he still went to buy some from time to time, bringing them back to leave in the house. What if, one day, she just appeared? Later, the third prince was defeated, and the Meng manor was also destroyed. The crown prince ordered the execution of the entire Meng family. His heart tightened, and he couldn't help but speak out, let the women be exiled instead. On the day of the verdict, he was incredibly excited. He needed to think carefully about how to approach her without scaring her, but, why was a cold corpse waiting for him? The soldiers brought Zhao Ning over. Zhao Ning's face was contorted, his eyes bloodshot, and he said with hatred, Meng Fei found out about my affair with you and killed my wife and children. You, too, should taste the bitterness of losing what you love. Shui Yao's heart plummeted endlessly, falling into an abyss. A roar echoed in his ears, and the whole world spun. His hands trembled uncontrollably, his legs felt heavier than 1,000 pounds, and his once light and quick steps could no longer take even one more stride. Moments later, he fell straight to the ground. Shui Yao woke up with a start in the darkness, gasping for air, his hand clutching his chest, the pain still unbearable. Husband, a familiar voice sounded from behind him. Shui Yao's body trembled, he turned and embraced the sleepy person, his arms tightening as if to melt her into his very bones. Oh, gently, be careful not to press on the baby. Shui Yao shed tears again, loosened his arms slightly, and lowered his head to kiss her eagerly. Though the person in his arms didn't fully understand the situation, she reciprocated by extending her arms and offering her soft lips. Shui kissed his wife, secretly freed a hand, and pinched his thigh. Hiss, it's not a dream. He was still the happiest man in the mortal world. Great, the end.